Who can give us a good working definition of the word spirit before I put the definitions out there? Just state your name, where you're calling from, and give us what you think the spirit is. Let's set some definitions.
To me, this is Jane.
Peace.
Spirit is simply the mother, the father, the everything God. It is the very energy, the very air that we breathe. It is not made a religion. It is not sex orientated. It is the energy, the very breath that you breathe.
Anybody want to add on to that, family?
Yeah, this is Kwame in Atlanta. Can I chime in?
Go right ahead, family. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I think there's a correlation of why we use spirits to label things like liquor or stimulants, because it has to do with the mind. So I think a person's spirit ultimately has to do with their frame of mind, how they view things, how they think. It's all in your brain, your perception of your environment, which also relates to how you behave towards the people and the things that are surrounding you. So person's spirit is essentially their actions, what they see, and how they react towards what they see. That's my brief definition of what spirit is.
Indeed.
I'd like to
Please, come on in here, Queen.
To me, spirit is the sustaining energy that causes all things in our universal order to move, to live, to evolve, to move around. And that spirit is what keeps us all who we are, our energy, our breaths, our lives, and all that we encounter. It's the thing that keeps the universe moving.
If I may interject, this is Donald McKinney, Louisville, Kentucky, member number 4.
What's going on? What's going on, family?
What's up, brother? How you doing now? How's everybody doing this evening? I would like to say I agree with everything everybody's saying, and basically I feel that spirit is also consciousness, basically consciousness. When you're, as you speak right now, you hear me speak, you're consciously connected with me, listening to me, and we're all just consciously connected in the mind, your mentality, how you think, what everybody said. I agree with everything everybody said, but consciousness.
Oh, indeed. All right, family. Well, with that being said, we kind of got a working definition of spirit. Let me ask you all this. What is the definition of soul, and what's the difference between your spirit and your soul?
Donald McKinney, may I interject?
Please do. Come on in here, King.
Okay. Well, I would have to say emotions. Your soul is, your soul can change.
So you think the soul is something that can change?
Yeah, depending on, I think, well, no. I have to say that would be more of your, I have to say that would be more of your consciousness, because your consciousness your thoughts change all the time, your emotions, so I would say it's more consciousness. But your soul is that, you know what, that's a good question.
Yeah. Who
I'd
wants
like
to add on, family? Please do. Come on in here, Queen. State your name and where you're calling from.
This is Ephraim Kwan in Louisiana.
Jeez.
To me, the soul is your self-identity, that dot, that part of the whole of spirituality that is in total existence, the source. Your soul is your specific part of that, and it's also spirit. I call it soul spirit when I'm speaking to the younger. That it's that specific part of yourself that you have been given. And until that part, that soul part of your living being becomes, I don't even know what to call that, purified as the part, as an equal part to the spirit itself, the original spirit itself, you cannot unite with that spirit. But when you do, it becomes one with all of spirituality, all of creativity, all of the spirit of the Creator.
I
the
feel
Holy One.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
I agree with sister. This is Jane again. See, to me, soul is what carries on. The job of the soul is to learn the good, the bad, and the evil, and to get to the dimensions that we have to go through the dimensions we have to go through in order to get back to the Supreme, to the Creator. And so that's the job of the soul, to learn the good, the bad, the ugly, and to ultimately get to, I guess, what some of the Indians call nirvana, back to the source.
I think this Lerone in Oregon, everybody, what's up? I think that the soul. When I think of soul, I think of like the history of my personal ancestors. Like, we all have ancestors, but I think the soul is the history of my personal ancestors, and it has stuff like how the brother said, your emotions, and I would say like your temperament, the things that you like, the things that come natural to it, your talents. I think all that stuff stems from your soul, and I think that the difference is that your spirit is your connectedness, and more importantly, your relationship with the universe. And when I say the universe, I literally mean everything from plants to the sky, to other people, to other animals. So, yeah, when I think of soul, I think of like how you would just get a premonition, or you would just get a feeling like, wow, I feel like I'm really supposed to be this personal trainer or whatever, because that's from your I think the sister just said, like, it's like a history. I don't know how she said, I think it was Sister Jane said that it's like a history, and I do believe that like literally all the strength, like some of us are warriors, some of us are healers, some of us are teachers. I think that's part of your soul, and that comes from your ancestry, even the ones we don't know, right? But that's just my little 2 cents in.
Thank you, bro. You said exactly what I was trying to say.
It takes a village. Let me tell you all that you are all correct in our ancestral sense, all right? So without getting too far ahead in our call, we know that Islam, Christianity, and Judaism came from one source. That one source was Kemet. We did the knowledge on that 2 weeks ago, all right? And we're going to touch more on it later on. We're going to talk about why Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are the dominant forces on the planet right now, and it's not what you think. It's all because of one person, and that man was Cyrus the Great. Kurash is what he's called, but in the Bible he's referred to passively as Cyrus. We're going to touch on that. But if we go back to the source, which is Kemet, right? Kemet developed the most sophisticated and comprehensive spiritual system on the planet up to that time. And we're talking about anywhere from 7,000 to 9,000 years ago, all right? In Kemetology, in Kemetic science, right, in the Kemetic spiritual system, your Kemetic ancestors believed, and if y'all are taking notes, now's a good time to break out your pen and pad, because this is critical. Everybody's right, all right? But we're going to get very specific with this. Your Kemetic ancestors believed that the human soul was made up out of 5 parts. They believed that the human soul consisted of 5 parts, all right? They also believed that the soul was as part of your anatomy, as your arm, your leg, your head, and etc., right? So your soul is an actual part of your anatomy. Now, when I'm sending students through our work study course, we do an exercise where you come into contact with your soul for the first time. Now, I know that sounds kind of antithetical because you're always in contact with your soul. But because of the outside world, because of the process of miseducation that you've undergone, because of the chemicals that you ingest, because of the media, because of other psychographic factors, you become disconnected from your soul, all right? So I send our students through a workshop in order to reconnect them with their souls, which is one of the purposes of meditation. But I digress. 5 parts, okay? The first part of your soul is your heart, okay? In Kemetic science, this is called the, this is called the Jeb. My memory skipped me for just a second. Jeb. It's also sometimes spelled I-B or J-E-B. Now, your heart was the seat of your emotions, your thoughts, and your will. See, family, when we're talking about spirituality, we're not talking about rituals, right? We're not talking about going to church and listening to sermons. When we're talking about spirituality, we're talking about metaphysics. Metaphysics is one of the 5 areas of life that we teach here in United Black America. That consists of everything that makes up who you are that is not physical. That's what metaphysics is. So if y'all are under the impression that metaphysics is talking about the Anunnaki and the alien origins of humanity, that very well may be part of it, right? Because of your connection to the universe. But when we're talking about metaphysics, we're getting practical with it. We're talking about everything that makes up who you are that is not tangible, that I can't put my hands on. And this is important to understand, family, because if we are to understand who we are as a people and redeem our people and overcome this system of white supremacy, we've got to know without a shadow of a doubt who we are. That starts with understanding our soul, not religion, right, but metaphysics. That's knowledge of self. Knowledge of self is who you are, how you came to be, the world around you, and your place in that world. Who you are starts with what we're talking about tonight. So don't think this is mental masturbation, family, and don't think this doesn't have a point. And don't think that by overstanding what we're covering tonight, you're not making an impact on the world around you by making an impact on yourself. You are. I digress again. Let me focus. Your heart, your seat of emotions. This is called the Jeb in comedic sciences, all right? These are your emotions, your thoughts, your intentions, and this was the key to the afterlife, family. You all have seen those papyri where there's a heart being weighed on the scales of Mayat, right?
Yes.
That was the Jeb.
Yes.
Your heart comes from your mother. One drop of your mother's blood while you are in the womb becomes your heart. This is the link to your past that the Queen Jane out of New York was talking about, right? And then that the kings came in and reinforced. This is your link to the past. That one drop of blood that creates your heart, which ultimately becomes the seat of your emotions, your thoughts, your wills, and your intentions. The collective experience of 50,000 years in one drop of blood. That's the first part of your soul, according to your Kemetic ancestors. The second part of your soul, family, is what's called the Ren, R-E-N. Your Ren is your name. Pause. Your ancestors believed that your name had as much of an impact on your soul as anything else. But the second part of your soul was your Ren, your name. Your ancestors believed that as long as your name was spoken, you would live on. But the implications are far greater when it comes to knowledge of self, family. We talked about this last week and a few weeks ago. If your enemy wants to subjugate you, if the enemy wants to take away your knowledge of self, if the enemy wants to control your narrative, if the enemy wants to remove you from your history, they've got to start by removing your name from you. Think about everything that makes up your name, right? If I say the name Michio, you know I'm talking about a Japanese male, probably, if you speak Japanese language, right? Xi Jinping, you know that's a Chinese male, right? If I say Naswada and you speak the local language, you know that that's a Gao boy, Gao being old kingdom on the West African coast, right? Kwame, Michael, Brandon, Jose, right? And even Jose is a terrible example. It'd be more like Atahualpa, right? All these things communicate so much to you in one word. I know the language that that person probably speaks. I know the area that that person lives in. I know the history that that person is bringing into the world with them. Names are powerful, family. What we call ourselves matters. Anybody agree or disagree? If you agree, let me hear you say Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe, yeah, you're on it, man.
Ashe.
Ashe.
So indeed, our names are important, and your Kemetic ancestors understood that, and so too did your traditional enemy, which is why when we go back to that movie Roots, we all used to joke about that scene, what's your name? And he kept saying Kunta Kinte, right? That was a powerful scene, because what he was doing was he was retaining that 50,000 years of his ancestral history, trying to hold on to it to the point of death. Because without that identity, who are you? I'll tell you who you are. What you see outside of your window right now. A nation of people without a purpose. A lost group of people who are more ready to identify with their oppressors than they are with their own people. Because they walk around with names like Brandon, Michael, Robert, Keith. Names that have been disassociated from that 50,000 years plus of ancestral history. Look, 50,000 years is all I can prove right now. If you told me to put an artifact in your hand that would measure the period of time that we've been upon this earth, the oldest thing I can give you is 50,000 years with 100% confirmation. But they're digging up things every day that go back 100,000, 200,000, almost 1.2 million years. That's black history. moving forward, family, the third part of your soul that your Kemetic ancestors believed in was your shadow. All right? Now, we can get philosophical with this, and we can get into Muata Ashby's interpretation of this. Pause. Is there anybody who's never heard of Baba Muata Ashby?
I haven't.
No, I
have not.
Okay, so we got a couple of kings and queens who have not. This is a warrior scholar in our community. He wrote a book called The Book of Coming Forth by Day, which is a proper translation of both the words and intentions of what you mistakenly believe is the Book of the Dead. See, when white folks dug this up and they tried to translate the text using their Greek translations, which were off, you all remember that the Shabaka stone was a stone that they dug up, and it had 3 different translations of the same words. One version was in Kemetic, one version was in an advanced form of Kemetic, and then one version was in Greek. They used that as their method of translation, right? But what they're missing is the engagement of their melanin, because they didn't have enough to engage with those words. Words carry more than just a literal meaning. There's a spiritual connotation. That's neither here nor there. They dug this up. They translated falsely this book of information as the Book of the Dead. They said that this was a book of rituals for dead people. No, family. This is the book of coming into the light, the book of coming forth by day. In other words, the book of enlightenment. A book that's not meant for the dead, but is meant for the living. So Muata Ashby translated that so-called Book of the Dead, and in that he describes the shadow, right, as the wake that you leave behind you, the ripple of your actions on the pool of the universe that spread outwards. Okay? Now, your ancestors called it your shadow because it's always behind you or beneath you, right, depending on the position of the sun. But this is all of the activities that you've engaged in that have affected the world around you. That's part of your soul, which is why when you've done things in the past that you're not proud of, you carry that guilt. Those are the ripples, your shadow, the effects of your intentions. The next part of your soul, according to your Kemetic ancestors, was what we call your Ka. And I think our queen out in Louisiana, Queen, pronounce your name for us again.
Epriamaquan.
Epriamaquan. Our queen Epriamaquan out in Louisiana alluded to this. Your Ka is your vital spark. This is your spirit, the part of you that lives on. And in fact, your Kemetic ancestors had a ritual when you transitioned. They would open up your mouth and they would release your Ka. This is your spirit. And then the final part of your soul, out of those 5 parts that we covered, was your Ba, B-A, or your personality. This is what made you uniquely you, family. This is what your Kemetic ancestors believed separated you from every other person. Now, there are 4 things that unite you with everyone else. Your heart, that one drop of blood that came from your mother, the link to your 50,000 years of ancestral past, the link to every other black man, woman, and child that shares your origins. Your shadow, all right? That's collected because your ripple connects with my ripple, and they create the world around us. Your name passed on to you from, again, 50,000 years of your ancestry that lends to your identity and ultimately lends to your soul. Your Ka, that vital spark, that spirit that lives on beyond you, that unites with one collective universal spirit of all knowing, all being, and all existing in the past, present, and future simultaneously. And then finally, your individual personality or your Ba. Those, family, are the 5 parts of your soul according to your Kemetic ancestors. Now, who's hearing that information for the first time? Let me hear you say right here.
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 The reason you're hearing that for the first time is because in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, which came from these original spiritual systems, they weren't able to comprehend these teachings. They called them the mystery systems. You had one person who came close enough to take something out of Kemet and give to the rest of the world that would benefit them to an extent. That one person we call the lawgiver. Anyone familiar with who I'm talking about?
Moses.
No. I'm talking about Moses. Can anybody do the knowledge on Moses and make that connection for the family?
Is it Moses or Musa?
It is Musa properly. And see, that's the thing. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are all in the same room, right? They're all in the same room. So when you hear Musa in Islam, using the Arabic language and the Arabic culture, Arabic is a culture, not a language, right? One is the same. We're also talking about Moses, okay? Moses of the Old Testament of the Bible, Moses of the Torah, the Tanakh, and the, what's the third book? There's the Torah, the Tanakh, and the, come on, family, help me out.
Is the Talmud?
Talmud, absolutely. The Talmud. In Judaism, they're all connected. They're all one and the same. So somebody do the knowledge on Musa. Tell us what you know about him. Tell us what you know about his time in Kemet, and make the connection for us.
Peace, Brother Terrell. Can everybody hear me?
Peace.
Peace.
Yes.
I wouldn't say my knowledge is very extensive, but just a brief overview. He was born in Kemet and was raised in all the ways of the Kemites. So he knew the culture thoroughly. He knew what the principle of Ma'at meant and everything that encompassed that. So that's just my brief spiel on Moses, or Musa, as you would call him.
True indeed. True indeed. Musa was exposed to some of the mystery systems, but this isn't a system that you walk into and walk right out of after 4 years and understand what's written on those scrolls, understand the workings of the soul. In his very brief time in Kemet, being a member of the royal family, he was exposed to just enough to go back to his people, get them to revolt, and create their own religion that would ultimately become Christianity. The only reason why we know who Musa is, the only reason why Judaism survived, which ultimately led to the rise of Christianity and Islam, is because of a man named Cyrus the Great. All right? Cyrus the Great, let me just put this into context real quick for you all, family, before I open up the floor. Cyrus the Great ended up passing on his empire to a man named Cambyses. Cambyses ended up passing on that empire to a man named Darius, and Darius passed on that empire to a man named Xerxes. Now, we all are familiar with Xerxes, but real quick, who is not familiar with Xerxes? Let me hear you say right here.
Right here.
Right here. I'm not familiar with this.
Right here.
Xerxes was the leader of the Persian Empire, the largest empire at that time, and one of the top 3 largest empires in all of human history as far as we know. All right? He was the bad guy, so to speak, in the movie 300, where the Greeks were made to look like they were some cavalier group of warriors fighting for the future of democracy and quote-unquote white supremacy, in parentheses, footnote, right? And it made it look like they were fighting against these Arab and African hordes of mutants and demon and devil worshippers. Nothing could have been further from the truth. The empire that Xerxes inherited from Darius, and Darius inherited from Cambyses, and Cambyses inherited from Cyrus the Great, otherwise known as Kurash, was one of the most democratic empires in human history. This is important for our discussion tonight, family, because when Cyrus conquered a land, let me take you all back in time. Typically, when you conquer the land, it's exactly what you all would expect, family. People get their heads cut off. They dismantle the government. They stop you from worshiping the gods that you were worshiping, right? Now you're paying tribute in the form of slaves and money to the central empire that just conquered you. Typically, that's what it was like, right? You go into somebody else's crib, you slaughter everybody until they say, okay, we don't need no more of that. And then you move in and you set up shop, and that becomes your crib, all right? Now, what ended up happening under the Cyrus regime was he would move into a land, right? He would threaten them with destruction, but he said, you can avoid all this, and you can keep your gods, keep your culture, keep your names, keep everything just the way it is, just as long as you pay tribute to the Central Empire. Now, if you have an army, right, of hundreds of thousands from all over the world representing people who took that deal, you got an army at your doorstep, and they say, you can keep everything that you got, we just want you to pay, right? We want you to pay to play. Or We're going to rape your women, kill your children, slaughter all the men, level your land, sprinkle salt into the field so nothing grows again. You would probably take the other deal, right? Y'all feel me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Follow me, family. Flow with me. This was how Cyrus operated, okay? This is important to our discussion because when Cyrus invaded the land of Judea, Judea was a warlike tribe. We talk in Old Testament. You all know how the Old Testament got down. These worshipers of Yahweh, who was a war god, were slaughtering their neighbors. You all read into the Old Testament about how genocide was the will of God, how they would go from tribe to tribe, slaughtering all the men, women, and children. Now, when Cyrus came in, he conquered Judea, and he conquered all the tribes that Judea was trying to slaughter. This meant they were all part of one empire now, and the slaughter had to stop. But with that, the worshipers of Yahweh changed their tactics. They became what we would consider Jehovah's Witnesses. And they would go from village to village preaching their gospels and spreading their religion, which Cyrus allowed to happen. In fact, Cyrus encouraged it. That meant that the worshipers of Yahweh now had access to the largest empire in the world. That's how Christianity spread. It spread like a disease or a tick on the back of the empire that Cyrus the Great built. Now we know that Christianity came from Judaism, right? So too did Islam. In fact, Islam came in part from Christianity, but it was a changed version of Christianity designed to meet the needs of the Arab people. Pause. This is important, family. When other groups come into contact with a spiritual system that didn't come from them, they change that spiritual system to meet the needs of their people. What I'm telling you all is they took Christianity from you. They changed Christianity to meet, they changed Christianity to meet their needs, the needs of Albions, the needs of other people. And when they captured you, they fed your Christianity right back to you. But it was bastardized. It was literally whitewashed.
Ashe.
It was the spiritual system that people like Moses, the lawgiver, learned in Kemet, gave to his people. They went back up north, changed it, came back down south to Africa, and into what they mistakenly called the New World, which wasn't new because we were already there, here in North America, elsewhere, South America, elsewhere, and fed it right back to you. This brings our conversation full circle, family. All right? So I want to apologize for you all letting me run my mouth for the past 20 minutes, but I wanted to give you all context.
No. Encore. They go, I say, man, preach, baby, preach. I've never heard, man. You know, talk that talk, baby. Sitting and chill to a spot.
Well, I want to open up the floor and see where the family's head is at. How do you all feel about what you all were just given in terms of that information, and who has something they want to add?
Well, I'm Donald McKinney, if I may go first, you know what I'm saying, Louisville, Kentucky, member number 4. And I honestly, you know what I'm saying, just want to, you know, reiterate the fact that with that last part you said, you know, that's my son speaking. Hey, baby, that's my 3-month-old. He wanted to get in. Yeah, literally, that last part you reiterated on that the fact that we are, I don't know if you say the word autonomous to this planet or indigenous to this planet. Like anywhere you go, if you want to go to Africa, if you want to go to China, Asia, if you want to go to Australia, if you want to go to North and South America, we were already there. You know what I'm saying? And I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of years ago. This is evidence, proven. It's a scientific fact. We are the indigenous people of this planet. And the big question I want us to really start asking and get serious on is, where did these white people come from? How is it that we've allowed a race of people for the past few hundred years, because they ain't had that much power for that long. They've only been in power for a few hundred years. How did we let these people come in and take our women away from us, take our culture, take our knowledge, take our tongue from us? How were they able to do this? They knocked us out is what happened. When you fighting in the war, they came in with a super punch. Oh, no, we dropped their ball. I don't know what it is, but that's what we need to be asking. Where do white people come from? That's all I got to say.
Indeed. Who wants to answer that, family? Because I think that has context in our discussion. Anybody want to answer that before I give my response?
I like it.
Let's let somebody who hasn't had a response yet. If you haven't responded yet, come on in.
I might be totally wrong on this, but this is my belief. The white man was a barbarian, didn't even know how to wash. He goes to Timbuktu in Africa to learn how to read and write. So there are two cultures that he depends on just to learn how to wash and read. One is Africa, and one is China. The Chinese were just one land. They weren't broken up into tribes and what we would call cities or countries. They were just one, under one emperor. So when the Chinese got knowledge of this parasite, they threw him out and they built the wall. The Africans were like the Indians. We were tribal, like American Indians. We were tribal. We were broken down into different zones, different, what we would call cities or countries. And so the white man, being the devil that he is, corrupted each tribe, each city, my brother is mad with my sister over here, each portion, until he could steal and rob, which is what he did to the American Indian. He is a corruption. He is a cancer. And this is why he was able to do what he did. In China, he couldn't, because he couldn't spread his disease from point to point to point, like a virus. But in Africa, he spread it west to north to south, and he just got away with it. He started with just stealing our land and our children, and then he spread and stole our gold, and he's still doing the same thing. And I'll shut up.
Indeed.
Sorry.
No, thank you, Queen. Thank you. Anybody else want to respond to anything that's been said thus far before we move forward?
I would like
I'd like to add something. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is Nicola from Baytown. I hadn't spoken all night. I basically just wanted to respond to the whole overall theme of what you were presenting. I want to say thank you for it, because I said before, the last time we had a discussion, I had been in seminary and got my awakening during that time. And I have been very, very connected to spirit, and I've had to work in these realms for a long time where, you know, some people may just see it as a system, but I've definitely dealt with spirit in a very deep level. And so I was just saying that I kept researching down, and in the middle of the night I heard spirit speak to me and say, Memphite theology. So I started studying Memphite theology, so everything was leading me back to Kemet anyway. So to hear you give such a beautiful explanation of all of this tied together really just did my soul wonders. So I just want to say thank you for that, because it's definitely helped propel my study of where I've already been kind of headed. As far as where the white people were coming from, we were complicit with certain things that allowed them to do what they did to us. So we sometimes look at Africa as if, these invaders just came in. Yes, they did come in very barbarically and take over, but at a certain point, we became complicit in our own demise. And I think until we as Black people start looking at the whole aspect of, okay, what went wrong on our part? How were we weakened to a point where we allowed ourselves to be taken over by these people? We won't get true healing. We have to come out of that ignorance of just looking at them as, we were just so victimized. No, we took place in some things that we need to repent for. We took place in some things that we need to own up to.
Like what?
Like letting our children get out of hand. Family, we were the parents of humanity. We were the first teachers. Let's go back in time to the very first white civilization. It was a civilization called the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete. They learned everything that they needed to know from the people of Kemet, who were already civilized and had been well established for thousands of years. When the mountain in the middle of the island of Crete exploded, those Minoans fled to the north, and they became the Mycenaean or Mycenaean civilization. And rather than continuing to educate them and keep them as vassals, we dismissed them. Now, of course, Kemet, the great mother and the great teacher, was going through its own tribulations. We were facing onslaught from the empire of Persia, the same empire that was responsible for the rise of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, right? And so we were fleeing to the south. So we were already going through our own wars we were already going through our own wars. So we had been pushed further and further south out of Kemet and into Sudan. However, when those people had come, by the time those people came back to us in the year 1500 at the port of Ceuta, right? I'm sorry, specifically 1512, 1514, right? We had forgotten the fact that we were their first teachers. However, we still possessed that knowledge and that level of civilization they didn't possess, and our values had changed, right? Our values had changed. Understanding the enemy that we were dealing with, they were savages. They'd grown up in savagery, right? Even before they came into contact with our Kemetic ancestors, they lived in frozen, barren wastelands. And we can go further back in time, 50,000, 100,000 years ago, 350,000 years ago, and talk about how they got there. We've got to take responsibility for the fact that we were the original teachers of mankind. We've got to relearn what was forgotten and then turn around, each one teach one, and subjugate our bastard and unruly children and bring Mayat back to this planet. That's what we've got to take responsibility for. So for the brothers and sisters sitting out there and they're saying, why does Black history matter? We ain't got time for that. We're at war. Why does all this talk about our soul and spirit and Mayat